I started a brand new world in hardcore Minecraft. My name is Cal Brown and I'm a player who just started recording my world progress and decided to share my journey through this new hardcore world. Now this is part 1 of a 3-part series I'm releasing that follows the early progression as I seek to establish myself in this new world. Now, I use the term new loosely as this world is actually about 120 days old. I had spent some time establishing the basics of this world before I decided to start recording my progress, having really only set up some basic farms, getting a few villagers for trading, and doing a little bit of end raiding. Since in essence this world is still fairly new, I figured this was the perfect time to bring you all along for the ride. I have some ambitious goals for this world that I hope you'll join me for. So, if you like what you see and want to be a part of what's to come, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and without further ado, let's get into the video. So we pick up in this world after having just raided the end. I really wanted to start building some resource farms that would allow us easy access to the large number of materials we would need for future building and exploration. This would also prevent us from getting too hung up on collecting individual resources, which I'm sure is something that won't be a prevalent issue in this video. In my mind, the first step was to build a villager breeder. This would then allow us to build an iron farm, which would really get the ball rolling with our future farms. With the beginning of this world so focused on farm building, I do want to mention that most of these farms are not designed by me, like this villager breeder that's designed by the creator Mortings. I will be crediting the designers of these farms here on screen, but if any of the farm designs stand out to you and you want to use them yourself, I'll leave the links to those videos in the description below. I also love learning about new builds and new farms, so if there are any farms you think I should include in my world that I don't build here, feel free to let me know in the comments. After finishing this visual monstrosity that I call a villager breeder, it was time to find the 2 new friends that would call this lovely little stone hut their permanent new home. Anyone who's worked with villagers knows how much fun it is to transport them literally anywhere. Thankfully, these 2 didn't give me any issues at all. This gave me false hope that the villagers in this world would be easy to deal with, even though it was a bit short-lived. Why are you out here? With these 2 snug in their new home, trust me, they're more than happy to be here. I decided it was time to move on to the iron farm while these 2 decided to get to know each other a little better. The iron farm design I went with was made by the designer Brian Craft. I wanted to build it out of stone brick so it'd be a little bit nicer than the villager breeder, but to do that I would need to collect more stone. You know it gives as much stone as you want. A stone generator. So I went into the mines to mine some more stone. With all the stone that I believed we needed to complete the iron farm collected, I wanted to trade tripwire hooks with fletching villagers so we could repair our tools. In previous versions of Minecraft, if you wanted to get a large number of emeralds or XP from villager trading, you would make a string duper and trade that string with Fletcher villagers. Although string dupers no longer work in version 1.21, tripwire hook dupers do work, and, in Java Edition, Fletchers have a 67% chance to buy tripwire hooks from you once they reach master level. Eventually we will be building a guardian farm to get XP and some of the building blocks we'll want for later builds, such as sea lanterns and prismarine blocks. For now, I have to settle to listening to my villagers complain that I'm ruining their economy by, and I quote, forcing them to buy nothing but tripwire hooks. Although I think the word forcing might be a little strong. With my tools repaired and resources collected, I wanted to build the iron farm somewhere near my temporary base. I wanted to make it high enough off the ground so that I wouldn't have any issues with iron golems spawning outside of the farm, and would give me ample space for the iron storage. Although it will be an eyesore for a while, I do eventually want to make a much larger iron farm with a build that encapsulates it. I built a basic item sorter and a large storage staircase, which, in hindsight, was pretty unnecessary, and then started to build the drop chute for the farm. On top of lava, I also like to add some soul sand campfires into the collection chute of the farm. This speeds up the process of transforming iron golems into a more useful resource. It's generally wise to put the lava in your farm after you've completed the rest of the build, but I decided to be a little unconventional and put the lava and soul sand campfires in before completing the rest of the build. The benefit to this is that I would get to have a slightly elevated heart rate while I continued building around the exterior of the farm, as well as get the time to contemplate why I had not yet built a raid farm, which would allow me access to totems. After finishing the cozy little scare factories that these villagers would probably be spending the rest of their lives in, it was time for me to move in both the villagers and the zombies that I would need to properly make this farm function. To get the villagers into place, I built a small railway from the villager breeder to the small chambers that the villagers would call home. I personally like to move the villagers with a furnace minecart. I feel this is a pretty underrated way to get minecarted villagers where they need to go, and can make villager transport a lot easier. Sometimes. To my surprise, I was able to get the first 3 villagers into place without issue. This once again lulled me into a false sense of security, thinking, you know, working with villagers isn't so bad. This is gonna be easy. Dude, what the heck? I mean, how'd you guys even get stuck? Ugh, man, you guys are the worst, I swear. Since I now needed to wait for the villager breeder to make some more villagers so I could finish the iron farm, I decided it would be a good use of time to start collecting resources for the next farm we were going to make. This creeper farm was designed by the creator Jumper, but to make the farm, I would need a lot of stone. You know it makes a lot of stone. Okay, so this time I actually did build a stone generator. However, I was running low on iron since we needed some more hoppers for the stone generator, and the iron farm wasn't up and running yet. I turned some of the local iron golems into the last resource that we needed to finish up the stone generator. Once the villager breeder had enough time to make the remaining villagers that we needed for the iron farm, I moved them into the last 2 permanent apartments that we had to give out, tore down the rail system, and prepped some name tags for the 4 friends who would make the villagers stay here just a little less comfortable. For whatever reason, at the time I thought it would be funny to name all 4 zombies Bartholomew. So, I got Bartholomew, 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 and Bartholomew all tagged and set into place. With everyone where they needed to be, it was time to finish the farm without any more setbacks. Oh my gosh, wait, oh, crap. Shoot, what do I do? I think I can duck under the lava. I should be okay. You know what? I think it's fine. Let's just go for it. Come on. Out. Okay, water. Oh, gosh, what the heck, man? Alright, look. Yes, I might be bad at the game, but at least you can take something away from this. Like, put your lava in last, or, I don't know, block up the lava chute. With the rest of the farm completed, all that was left to do was to activate Bartholomew and set up this little dispenser stream for the poppies that are automatically being filtered out of the farm. Since I have a bone meal farm nearby, it's the perfect place to filter the poppies into. That way nothing from this iron farm is going to waste. With the iron farm completed, it was now time to turn our full attention towards the creeper farm. I was in some serious need of gunpowder since I used up most of the last of my rockets while I was end raiding, and although there are other ways to get around using an elytra, rockets are the most convenient. I'd collected most of the materials that I needed while I was waiting for villagers from the villager breeder when I was finishing the iron farm, and I had found a pretty nice spot in the ocean that was about 8 chunks away from most land, which would help negate some of the other mob spawns while I was trying to get creepers to spawn within the farm. But you know what other farm also gives gunpowder? A raid farm. With the location all picked out, it was time to build a farm that, thankfully, did not have a lava chute. Even though this farm does not use lava, I showed that, if I make a dumb mistake once, I'm capable of making that same mistake again immediately. Obviously, putting just soul sand campfires in the farm without lava is significantly less dangerous. However, this does show my acute lack of self-preservation in a world where I do not respawn. The design of this farm is pretty simple. A couple layers of spawning platforms that clearly only creepers can spawn on. A nice water bed that slowly pushes the creepers towards their final resting place, and the drop chute with soul sand campfires at the bottom to put the creepers to sleep permanently and collect the gunpowder I would need for my rockets. With the straightforward farm design, building the farm was going pretty smooth up until I got to the first spawning platform. Building the platform itself was not the issue, rather I realized I did not have all the materials that I needed to finish the rest of the farm. The guide Jumper provides is a very good guide. One thing to note is that the material list only shows enough materials per layer of the farm. This is specified next to the picture, which, for whatever reason, I decided didn't exist, showing just how oblivious I really am. That being said, I realized that I would not have enough trapdoors to complete the farm, so I'd have to go chop down some more wood. Now there are two really good ways to get quick access to a large amount of wood that I could use for this project and future projects as well. The first is making a bamboo farm. With bamboo and using an autocrafter, you can have a bamboo farm make you a large amount of blocks of bamboo. This you can turn into bamboo planks and also into bamboo trapdoors. The second option would be to make some sort of tree farm. Now, you can do this in a few different ways, like using a TNT duper to destroy the trees automatically, or using a piston system to grow a large number of trees at once, and then just chopping them down with an axe. I had also previously made a bone meal farm, so I had unlimited access to bone meal that I would need for either farm I wanted to make. With all these solid options, guess which one I chose? That's right, it was option 3, destroying the local ecosystem through the environmental crime known as deforestation. I have a few quirks when it comes to cutting down trees, such as I don't like chopping down trees with extended branches or that really go out of a 1-block reach. That way it makes it a little easier for me to chop the trees. And like a lot of the companies who commit these same acts, I like to replace the trees I chop down. However, unlike them, this definitely slows down my wood collecting process. With my plan to become an internationally wanted man in place, I headed home, running into an illager outpost that we would use for an ominous bottle farm later, and then got to work chopping down oak logs. I spent the better part of a half hour chopping down trees until my inventory was full of oak logs, crafting those oak logs into trapdoors, and repeating this process until I had enough trapdoors to finish the farm. With both the farm and my indiscretions against nature completed, I AFK'd the farm just long enough to get a little bit of gunpowder, allowing me to craft rockets, and once again granting me the ability to fly. With easy access to an unlimited supply of gunpowder, I now wanted to turn my attention towards a sugarcane farm. I already had a dinky little manual farm, but I wanted a farm that would produce more sugarcane than I would ever need automatically. This way, I would always have an unlimited supply of rockets. The farm build I decided to go with was made by the creator Thunk MC, and it's a pretty simple design that should produce more than enough sugarcane that I'll need, at least for a while. The first thing I realized I would need is a decent amount of slime so I'd have enough slime blocks to make the flying machine. You know what makes as much slime as you'll ever need? A slime farm. So I set off to my local swamp to hunt enough slimes that I would need to get the blocks for my sugarcane farm. Being the intelligent Minecraft player that I am, I made it here during the day of a new moon. For those of you who are just as confused as I was, slime spawning in a swamp is actually correlated with the phase of the moon. And it just so happens that during a new moon, slimes won't spawn. Huh. Cue me wandering around the swamp for 8 minutes of real life time, wondering why I can't find a single slime. After enough aimless wandering, I noticed what my issue was, and realized I probably wasn't getting enough slime the following night either, so I decided I had to come up with a backup plan. Creating a slime farm. No. That would be way too efficient. Instead, I decided to wait a whole 10 real life minutes. That way, once the sun set, I could collect the slimes I needed the following night. So after spending a whole Minecraft day staring at the sun, I took out the few slimes that spawned and headed back towards the base. You're probably thinking right now, but Calbrown, you need more slimes than that to build the flying machine you want. And you'd be absolutely right. That's where part 2 of my plan comes in. After I got back to my base, I brewed a few slime potions, found some innocent wild chickens, brought them to a lovely field where we found even more friends, and then... they magically transformed into slimes! Would you look at that? Nature sure is crazy, isn't it? And with the help of our magical new slime friends, we now had enough slime to build the flying machine. I wanted to pick a spot for the farm that was near my village. Since I spent a good amount of my time there, I figured this would give the farm enough time to run it and collect a decent amount of sugarcane. And you know, keeping a flying machine near mobs such as villagers has never caused anyone any issues before. Now the design I was using had you build a 2-block wide platform on either side of the farm. I realized that sugarcane will actually get pushed onto these platforms, and unless you hollow out the bottom to let the minecarts run underneath, the sugarcane will just get stuck there. It was also around this time that I noticed that the design I was using called for a large number of redstone blocks to power all the powered rails, and I didn't have nearly enough. Now there was obviously an easy solution such as, just use some redstone torches, it's significantly cheaper and will work just as well. But for whatever reason, my brain didn't recognize this as an option, and thought the only valid way to build this farm is with redstone blocks powering the powered rails. This meant I would need more redstone. You know what farm produces more redstone than you'll ever need? A raid farm. Is this gag getting old? Yeah. Does that mean I'm gonna stop? With the redstone we needed, plus a little extra gold for the powered rails, man, I feel like there's a farm for that. I went back to actually building the sugarcane farm. I included a 2-block high glass wall, hoping this would be enough to keep the villagers away from the flying machine. So here's a fun fact for you. I'm actually really bad at redstone. Like, even simple redstone. So it took me significantly longer than I would like to admit to figure out why my flying machine was not working. Eventually I noticed it wasn't actually because the redstone itself, but because the slime blocks were attached to the glass walls, preventing the flying machine from moving. I figured it was just easier to leave a 2-block gap in the farm. We were gonna have enough sugarcane anyway, so it wasn't that big a deal. And considered this farm complete, meaning it was time to move on to the next farm. The raid farm. No, this is not a joke. We are actually building a raid farm now. And the design I went with is actually a pretty simple one too, made by a creator named Adil Games. We will probably make a larger raid farm in the future, as raid farms give a ton of useful resources, like some of the ones we mentioned earlier. Gunpowder, redstone, but you also get emeralds and totems, and even a few others that I didn't mention here. Now, before the introduction of ominous bottles in Minecraft version 1.20, you were able to create what was called a stacking raid farm. This would allow you to stack a large number of raids at the same time, granting you a very large number of resources very quickly. This mechanic was changed because of the introduction of the ominous bottle. There are some farm designs that allow you to still get a large number of raid materials fairly quickly. However, right now, we just want a functioning farm that gives us access to some of these valuable resources. I gathered all the materials we would need to build the raid farm, and picked a spot in the ocean that wasn't too far from the Illager outpost we had found earlier. Eventually, we'll turn that Illager outpost into an ominous bottle farm. One of the things I really like about this farm design is that the build itself is actually a very quick build. As you can see from the time lapse, it didn't take very long at all to get the farm put together. And even the villager I had to bring in cooperated really well. However, no farm could ever be that simple with me. The one thing this farm design did not have that I personally like to add into any farm I make that yields multiple resources is some type of item sorter. I assume the reason this farm does not have an item sorter is because it's built at water level, and anyone who works with redstone knows that water and redstone do not mix. The easy solution would be to build the farm a couple blocks above the water level. That way I could build the redstone for the item sorter without any issues. Although I think we've all learned by now that I don't actually think that far ahead. With the materials I had, I was planning on building the item sorter underwater. I set up enough rows of chests so that I would have enough storage space for each individual item that the farm drops, and then set up a couple sets of double chests for the non-stackable items. I then built the shell of the storage's redstone system. This would allow me to get rid of any water source blocks, as well as be able to use signs to keep the water out. That way the redstone could function without getting ruined by water. I used a glass roof over the redstone system. Firstly, because it's a non-spawnable block, that way raids won't spawn outside of the designated zone in the raid farm. And second, this will allow the redstone in the back to stay connected to the rest of the sorting system. Lastly, I put in the redstone and redstone components that would make the sorting system function, put in some sorter items along with each of the individual items that the farm would produce, and then tested the farm to make sure everything ran properly. With the farm fully functional, we could check the raid farm off the list and move on to our next project. I wanted to make sure we had easy access to ominous bottles. This would allow us to run the raid farm for extended periods of time. Luckily, we had an Illager outpost nearby, which brings us to our next project, the Ominous Bottle Farm. The farm design I went with was made by the creator Shulkercraft. It's a solid starting farm design with a pretty low material cost. The biggest part of this farm is needing an 81 by 81 block spawning platform for the Illagers to spawn on. Thankfully, the Illager outpost we found was pretty flat, so we wouldn't need to do a lot of terraforming. However, we would need to fill in a decent amount of water. I decided to save the terraforming for later and just start with building the farm. I started with the collection centers, spawned in a new friend, I think I'll call him Fred, and then finished the roasting centers for the Illagers. I took down a few layers of the outpost, that way more Illagers could admire Fred, which would draw them into the roasting pits. Set up a few torches to spawn-proof the inside of the outpost, and set up some scaffolding to where we would eventually AFK the farm. With the basic setup, we would now need to make the 81 by 81 spawning platform to get the farm started. I started with making a border around the area we would need to fill in and clear out. I tore down the Illager structures, freeing a few thieving allays, as well as freeing some of Fred's distant relatives. They weren't too thrilled with the idea of me keeping Fred in a one-block space for the rest of eternity, but thankfully they decided to take out their frustrations on the locals instead of me. I cleared out the necessary sand from the platform, as well as filling in some of the water with the blocks I already had on me, as well as getting a wet fork along the way. I pretty quickly realized I did not have the blocks I needed to fill in the entirety of the platform. If I had done the math, I would have realized I needed approximately 3,200 blocks to fill in all of the water spaces. I instead decided to fill in a little bit of space, realize I didn't have enough blocks, go mine a little bit of stone, come back, fill in some space, realize I didn't have enough, go mine some more stone, come back, fill in some space, realize I didn't have enough. Yeah, I think you get the idea. Although I made this process more tedious than it needed to be, it still makes for a pretty nice montage. I AFK'd the farm for a few minutes, just getting a couple of each ominous bottle. And with the farm complete, it was time to move on to the last 2 farms for this video. When I was building the gunpowder farm, past me had said this.
There are 2 really good ways to get quick access to a large amount of wood that I could use for this project and future projects as well. The first is making a bamboo farm. The second option would be to make some sort of tree farm. Now, you can do this.
The last 2 farms we were building were a bamboo farm and a tree farm. Even though I decided it would be wise to build these farms after building the only farm in this video that required any significant amount of wood, having easy access to wood would be very useful for the builds we had planned for the future. That being said, the first of these 2 farms I wanted to build was a bamboo farm. The design I decided to go with was made by the creator Zediaf. This farm design was very similar to the sugarcane farm we had built earlier, except for the fact that the farm was a few blocks shorter. Why? I don't know. But it doesn't really matter. Bamboo tends to grow pretty quick, and in all honesty, this farm would be pretty easy to expand if we wanted to in the future. I used the redstone we had gotten from our last mining trip, but realized I didn't have quite enough gold for the powered rails, so I took a quick trip to the nether to get some more. Man, if only we had a gold found a future little friend that will probably stay in my end chest for far too long. Continued building and once again realized just how much redstone I could have saved if I used redstone torches instead of redstone blocks. But following the design of the sugarcane farm made putting together the rest of this design pretty easy. Around the time I was putting the flying machine together, I was visited by a wandering friend. And I greeted him in a not so friendly manner. But hey, he gave me 2 free leads, which was cool. So one thing that hasn't changed in the last 15 minutes is that I'm still bad at redstone. This farm is designed so I can send the flying machine with a push of a button. However, there are also 2 observers that sense when the bamboo's grown a certain height, and would then send the flying machine automatically. The redstone for the sensor was not complicated. However, it still took me longer than I'm going to admit to get this basic sensor to function. Once I got the sensor working, I then had an issue with the returner, returning, but I did eventually get the returner to work, and then built a storage system with 2 crafters, which would craft all of our bamboo into blocks of bamboo, meaning we could store more bamboo at once. And then the farm was complete, which meant we could move on to our final farm, a simple tree farm. The design I went with was made by the creator, Basic Redstone. This build was probably our quickest one yet. We started with a dispenser for the bone mill, which would dispense bone meal onto the saplings we plant, growing them into trees very quickly. This dispenser was placed next to a tall pillar of pistons, which would push the fully grown trees out of the way so I could plant more saplings and grow more trees. Finally, we had a long wall of pistons so that when our trees grew a certain length, they would push the trees out of the way, making room for even more trees. Basic Redstone used Basic Redstone this farm that I still had issues understanding. However, despite my ineptitude, I was able to finish the farm and gave it a quick test to make sure everything was running properly. And with that final farm, we had the very beginnings of this world complete. As I said before, this is only part 1 of a 3-part series I've already released to the channel, and I already have more content that I'm working on, as well as plans to live stream the series. That way I can share adventures as they happen. So if you like this video, leave a like, subscribe, and take a look at the next video where we start to explore more of the Nether. Until next time.